In April 2026, Uber's chief technology officer made a quiet admission. The company had already burned through its entire annual AI budget. Not by December, not by October, by April. A budget designed to last 12 months gone in 4. And the details make it significantly worse. Hi, I'm Sirad, a lawyer turned cybersecurity specialist. With a background in law and tech, I analyze how technology, cybersecurity, and geopolitics collide to shape global power. Uber had rolled out Anthropic's Claude code, an AI code tool, to its engineering team back in December 2025. By March, adopting had jumped from 32% to 84% of the company's 5,000 engineers. 95% of those engineers were using AI tools every single month. 70% of committed code was AI generated, and individual engineers were costing the company between $500 and $2,000 per month in AI usage on top of their regular salaries. Now, here's the part that tells you everything. This didn't happen by accident. Uber built internal leaderboards that ranked engineering teams by how much AI tools they used. The more you consume, the higher you rank. The higher you rank, the better you look. This is the corporate equivalent of handing every employee a company credit card, building a leaderboard for who spends the most, and then acting surprised when the invoice arrives. Before I show you how this plays out across the rest of the industry, you need one concept that makes the rest of the story legible. 15 seconds, I promise. A token is the basic unit of data that an AI model processes. Roughly one word, sometimes part of a word. Every time you use an AI tool, ask it a question, have it write code, run an AI agent, you are consuming tokens. And tokens cost money. The more complex the task, the more tokens it burns. A basic chatbot exchange might use a few thousand. An AI agent running a multi-step coding task can burn millions. Now here's where it gets interesting. The cost of individual tokens is falling fast. A Gartner report found that by 2030, the cost of running inference on a frontier AI model will drop by over 90% compared to 2025. That sounds like good news, and it is not. Because agentic AI models that don't just answer a question but actually go and do things autonomously require between 5 and 30 times more tokens per task than a standard chatbot. So the unit price falls, but the number of units explodes. Goldman Sachs projects that agentic AI could drive a 24-fold increase in token consumption by 2030, reaching 120 quadrillion tokens processed per month. This is a well-known economic pattern called the Jevons paradox. When a resource becomes cheaper to use, people don't use less of it. They use dramatically more. Cheaper tokens don't mean cheaper AI. They mean more tokens. As Gartner's senior director analyst put it, and I'm paraphrasing because this sentence is doing an extraordinary amount of work, chief product officers should not confuse the falling price of commodity tokens with the democratization of frontier reasoning. That warning is almost certainly not reaching the people who most need to hear it. So what happens when you take a resource that is getting cheaper per unit but more expensive in aggregate and then build a corporate culture that rewards consuming as much of it as possible? You get Meta's cloudonomics. In early April 2026, the information reported on an internal Meta leaderboard built voluntarily by an employee on the company's intranet. It tracked AI tokens consumption across more than 85,000 Meta employees. It ranked the top 250 power users. It awarded gamified titles: Token Legend for the highest consumers, Session Immortal for extraordinary session duration, Cash Wizard for efficiency in reuse. In a single 30-day period, Meta employees collectively consumed 60 trillion tokens. The top individual user burned through 281 billion tokens, averaging 9.36 billion tokens per day. At Anthropic's public API pricing, that would have cost approximately $900 million. And here's the detail that tells you everything you need to know about whether any of this consumption was producing proportional values. Some employees were leaving AI agents running idle for hours, doing absolutely nothing in order to inflate their position on their leaderboard. They invented a way to have a machine do nothing on their behalf. Is that automation, or is it the delegation of idleness? The leaderboard was taken down after press coverage, but Meta CTO Andrew Bosworth had publicly endorsed the underlying logic. He told Forbes his best engineer was spending the equivalent of his own salary in tokens, but was 5 to 10 times more productive as a result. Easy money, no limit. Keep doing it. Amazon has reportedly done the same thing. Employees pushing what Silicon Valley now calls token maxing, using as many AI tokens as possible, including on trivial tasks, purely to climb internal rankings. The industry has invented a term for competitive AI waste, and the largest technology companies on the planet are actively participating in it. Please share your thoughts on this in the comments below after hitting the like and subscribe buttons. I want to pause here and name what this actually is, because I think the absurdity of it can obscure the analytical point. These companies are measuring input, how many tokens are you consuming, as a proxy for output, how much value are you creating. And those two things have absolutely no guaranteed relationship. This is like rewarding your sales team not for how many deals they closed, but for how much petrol they burned driving to meetings. The top performer is not the one who generated the most revenue, it is the one who drove the most miles. The leaderboard tracks fuel consumption. Nobody is tracking the sale. From a legal and governance standpoint, this is also a significant liability question. If you're spending shareholder capital, and we are talking about billions of dollars on AI consumption that has no demonstrated return, that is not just a cost problem. That is a governance problem. That is a fiduciary question. Token maxing is the organizational version of optimizing for a metric that feels important: consumption, activity, usage, while completely decoupling from the question of whether any of that activity is producing proportional value. Meanwhile, Microsoft has been managing its own version of this crisis, and the details reveal something equally instructive. In December 2025, Microsoft opened up access to Anthropic's Claude code alongside its own GitHub Copilot CLI. Both are AI coding tools that run in a developer terminal. For roughly 6 months, Microsoft engineers run both tools side by side. The engineers preferred Claude code. Internal comparisons reportedly showed it outperforming Copilot CLI on real engineering tasks. It became, as The Verge put it, very popular, perhaps a little too popular. In May, Microsoft began canceling Claude code licenses. Engineers in the teams behind Windows, Microsoft 365, Outlook, Teams, and Surface were given until the 30th of June to remove Claude code from their workflows and switch to Copilot CLI. The official justification was tool chain unification. The timing, June 30th, the final day of Microsoft's fiscal year, suggests cost reduction was at least equally important. Running Claude code means paying Anthropic both a pre-seed license fee and API token costs on top. Routing Claude's models through Copilot CLI, which Microsoft owns via GitHub, eliminates the licensing layer and keeps the billing inside Microsoft's own ecosystem. But the cost story obscured the more revealing detail. Microsoft ran a 6-month experiment. Its own engineers chose the competitor's product, and Microsoft responded by removing the competitor's product rather than improving its own. This is a company optimizing for platform control over engineering quality. And consider the timing more broadly. GitHub Copilot is simultaneously moving to usage-based billing from flat pricing to a token consumption model. So Microsoft is consolidating onto a single platform at exactly the moment that platform is switching to same consumption-based pricing model that incinerated Uber's budget. The cost problem is not being solved, it is being reorganized under a different logo. And then there is NVIDIA, where the contradiction is so obvious it almost does not need commentary. Jensen Huang, NVIDIA CEO, said in March 2026 that he would be deeply alarmed if a $500,000 engineer at his company was not consuming at least $250,000 in AI tokens. His framing, tokens make engineers more valuable, spend more. Brian Catanzaro, NVIDIA's vice president of applied deep learning, told Axios, "For my team, the cost of compute is far beyond the cost of the employees." Same company, one executive says spend more on tokens, the other says the token already cost more than their people. Neither of them is wrong, and that is exactly the problem. Jensen Huang runs the company that manufactures the GPUs that process every single token consumed everywhere in the world. More tokens consumed means more GPUs needed, means more NVIDIA revenue. This incentive is to maximize demand. Of course, he wants engineers to burn through tokens. Catanzaro manages an actual engineering budget. His incentive is to deliver results within a cost envelope. Of course, he notices when the compute bill exceeds the payroll. The problem is that the use name signal from the top of the supply chain from the company that profits most from consumption cascades down through the entire industry. It reaches Meta, where it becomes cloudonomics. It reaches Amazon, where it becomes token maxing on trivial tasks. It reaches Uber, where it becomes a leaderboard that burns a 12-month budget in 4. The signal to consume originates from the people who sell what's being consumed. And at no point in this chain is anyone systematically measuring whether the consumption is producing proportional value. I hope this has resonated with you with all its complexity. If so, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. At this point, the question every comment section will ask is this a bubble? Let me be honest rather than satisfying. Nobody can call a bubble in real time. This is a near universal truth in economics. You only know it was a bubble after it pops. Anyone who tells you this is definitely a bubble or definitely not a bubble is offering you certainty that is almost certainly wrong. What I can tell you is what the numbers look like. Combined 2026 capital expenditure from Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Meta is now pushing $740 billion, a 69% increase from 2025. There have been over 92,000 tech layoffs in 2026 so far, already outpacing last year's total. But here is what is important. The underlying technology works. Claude code actually writes functional code. AI agents actually complete tasks. This is not a speculative technology with no demonstrated capability. The question is not whether AI works, the question is whether the rate of spending is sustainable given the current state of return. Every company is spending because every other company is spending. The fear of being the one that underinvested, the one that missed AI, is more powerful than the absence of proven returns at that scale. That is not a technology-driven investment strategy. That is FOMO, herd behavior at $740 billion. And here is where the story looks different from a European perspective. While American tech giants are pouring capital into internal leaderboards and token consumption contests, the European Union is slowly, imperfectly, but deliberately asking a different question. What should this technology actually be for? The EU AI Act, which came into force in 2024, is not just a regulatory framework, it is conceptually an attempt to answer that question before the spending happens, not after the budget is gone. Whether it succeeds is another matter, and the implementation is far from smooth. But the instinct behind it is the right one. Governance before deployment, not governance as damage control. The EU has also committed significant capital to Horizon Europe and the European Research Council, funding AI research not in corporate leaderboards, but in universities and public research institutions. The scale does not match Silicon Valley, of course, but the direction is worth noting. If the United States is building a culture of AI consumption, Europe is at least in principle trying to build a culture of AI purpose. The question is whether that approach produces breakthroughs or just regulation. Write me in the comments and I want to see what are your thoughts. My honest assessment, Europe needs both the ambition of Silicon Valley and the governance instinct it currently has. Right now, it has more of the latter than the former. But watching American tech companies incinerate their budgets on gamified token contests, the European instinct to slow down and ask why before asking how much does not look entirely wrong. So here is the takeaway. These companies do not have a coherent theory of what AI is supposed to do for them. They are adopting AI because everyone else is adopting AI. They are measuring consumption because consumption is easy to measure. And they are discovering one blown budget at a time. That the absence of a strategy is itself the most expensive mistake you can make. The technology is not a problem. The technology works. The deployment of the technology, who decides how it is used, what it's being measured, and whether anyone is checking if the output justifies the input, that is where every single one of those stories breaks down. Uber's CTO is already going back to the drawing board. That is encouraging. It could be more encouraging if the drawing board had existed before the budget was gone. But of course, corrections can happen. Another meeting can take place. A different strategy can emerge. That is not failure, that is just very expensive learning. If this kind of complicated analysis is useful to you, the intersection of technology, governance, and where the money actually goes, hit subscribe. And let me know in the comments, do you think these companies actually know what they are getting in return? Because right now, from where I'm standing, the leaderboard is the only thing getting measured. I will be happy to read your thoughts on this. See you in the next video. Bye.